Hello, this is Keith Kreischer, the Executive Director of the IoT M2M Council, or IMC, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to track 3 within our IoT Days fall event presented by the IMC. I certainly hope everyone joining us today is staying safe and well. The topic for this track is using IoT technology for asset tracking. We'll have a panel of 45 minutes or so, followed by 3 spotlight presentations of 10 minutes or so each. Those are coming from Core, iBasis, and Girdham. Everything today will be looking at supply chain management and asset tracking. So please stay tuned for all of that. But before we begin, I also wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. An on-demand version of this webcast will be available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. The presenters may answer the questions at the end of each session, but please feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. And that's important. If you've got questions, come forward with your questions. Any unanswered questions we'll respond to offline if we don't get to them. Never fear. We'll have a record of your question and we'll be able to put those to the appropriate presenters. And now, just before I introduce my good friend and colleague Robin Duke-Woolley of Beecham Research, just a quick word about the IMC. The IMC is the largest trade organization dedicated to the global IoT sector. Its membership is comprised of 28,000 rank-and-file adopter members who are individual enterprise users, product makers and OEMs, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions in the field. They join the IMC for our content, which in addition to online events like these includes live events. We're the exclusive IoT partner for CES and Embedded World, as well as providing adopters with use cases, white papers, newsletters, blogs. The IMC maintains one of the largest libraries of online IoT content that we know of. IMC adopters have to qualify for membership as IoT buyers. The IMC's Board of Governors includes over 30 actually, of the most influential IoT technology companies that provide solutions in the form of hardware, software, and connectivity. They join the IMC for access to our adopters for purposes of thought, leadership, lead generation, promotion, and research. We encourage any attending today to check out our website at iotm2mcouncil.org. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend, the founder and principal at Beecham Research, one of the best-known IoT analyst firms, Robin Duke-Woolley. Robin, good morning. Can you hear me, Robin? I think you're muted.
I am muted. Yes, I thought that would have undone itself. Great. Yes, thanks very much, Keith, for the introduction. That's great.
Hey, I got it down. I got it down to 3 minutes. I want you to note that.
Yeah. Okay. I will note that. Okay. Very good. So we're going to be talking today about asset tracking across borders, and I have with me 4 panelists. So there's Arne Aßmann from Once, Chief Strategy Officer at Once, Marty Jefferson, who's Commercial IoT Data Services Manager at Globalstar, Carmen Redondo, who is Director of Global Marketing for Antennas at Kyocera, and then Liz Wilson, who is Marketing Director of Ground Control. So that's a fairly diverse lineup for you today. And I'm going to start with a slide to talk about the introduction to this session. And then I'm going to hand over to Arne for a couple of slides from him, and then on to Martin, and then the others. Once we've done that, these introductions, then we'll get into the discussion points. As Keith said earlier, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask on asset tracking, then do put them in, and I'll introduce them to the panelists as we go along. So do please send them in. It's very nice to have a sort of interactive session with you in the audience. Okay, so I have just one slide, and it's really to introduce this topic of asset tracking without borders. And what I've shown here is two growth rates. So we have an overall growth rate of 13.8%, so nearly 14%. The overall asset tracking market growing from about $18.5 billion to $40.3 billion in the period from 23 to 29. There are a number of different numbers around in the marketplace, but these are the ones that we're using. But it gives an idea of the level of growth. It's certainly a growing market. And underneath that is something particular for cargo and trailer tracking, which is a faster growth and millions of units, so showing the actual growth in numbers of units. So asset tracking is definitely becoming an increasingly crucial part of business across industries. It used to be like a bit subsidiary, but now with all the connection requirements, things moving between companies, different levels of build, as well as final products, and then retail and so forth, there's lots of asset tracking required now. And it covers from cargo traveling across continents to people moving within large work sites, to wildlife roaming their habitats, and many others as well, parcel deliveries and so forth. So asset tracking takes a wide variety of forms, all of which can be supported by IoT. And we did a recent survey where we asked, was asset tracking used locally, regionally, or globally? And it turned out that over 60% of asset tracking is cross-border. So that is what this particular session is going to be focusing on, asset tracking across border. And we're going to be looking at the new satellite connectivity, the NTN opportunity that's coming up now. So if I now hand over to Arne, he's going to give us a little bit of an explanation about what Once is doing in this area.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me at this session. And also let me share my excitement because, Robin, what you just said is so true. The versatility of use cases that we see across asset tracking is really astonishing. So what can I share? What can I tell you? So what I've brought here also for this panel and the discussion today is a little bit of insights. Because I tell you what, if you do not know Once, let me quickly explain you what we do. But furthermore, please take with you today here, what is our saying for asset tracking? First of all, Once is a company that provides connectivity and software services. We do this in a special way. We allow customers to connect their devices for 10 years. And this with a very compelling and easy to use lifetime service fee charged at 10 euros. This allows customers to connect their devices for up to 10 years with all the features that you see seen here or listed at this slide included. Now, why does it matter, and why does it matter for asset tracking? We see we have gained over the last years over 21,000 customers across what you see here is 34 countries. Why does it matter? First of all, it tells us that customer asset tracking is a global use case, not just in the extent of where customers are using that, but also if you look at the numbers of countries where we are serving asset tracking use cases, it is 134. So it tells you, okay, this really is, if not the global use case in IoT. What I also brought for you here is a little insight on how quickly our customers are starting to deploy their use cases globally. Why do I show this, and why do I want to do this emphasis here at the intro of Once? First of all, we want to show you, okay, it is relevant. It is a global use case. There is some special requirements that we will be happy to discuss with you throughout the panel. And I will bring some further customer insights into that panel later. But first of all, thanks for having me, and over to next. You're still on mute?
Sorry, it puts me on mute, and I didn't realize. Yeah. So just handing over now to Martin from Globalstar.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. I'm Martin Jefferson from Globalstar. For those of you that don't know Globalstar, we are a broad-based next-generation telecommunications infrastructure provider. What does that mean? We operate a low Earth orbit constellation of 32 birds around the globe, and those are all connected to a network of ground infrastructure that gets the data from user terminals to the satellite network and down to the ground, and then off ultimately to customer endpoints. We have roughly 800,000 subscribers on the network today, little over 30 years in business and 200 plus countries served. And from a cross-section perspective, we have 6 kind of core businesses at Globalstar that we operate in. We're a little bit unique, especially in this panel, because we're an infrastructure operator, also a device manufacturer, and ultimately through retail channels that we have in the marketplace. We also deal with people, assets, terrestrial connectivity, really a broad spectrum across the board. I'm very pleased to be here and discuss the subject. It is the subject of the day, of the month, of the year, NTN. Really looking to get some insight from people in the terrestrial world, how that marries into the convergence of terrestrial and satellite, and ultimately learn something from everybody and share some of our experiences. We chose to kind of spotlight specifically on the subject matter today about how satellite is being used in satellite IoT is being used specifically in the transportation space. And we concentrate primarily on the non-powered assets in the supply chain. And non-powered assets are, of course, the trailers, the containers, the tanks, things like that. And it are in our world, it's primarily used for things like predictive maintenance, rather than doing maintenance based on a schedule. Having visibility and connectivity to those assets from a location perspective and a mileage perspective allows you to actually do them when required rather than on schedule. They're primarily used to reduce things like detention and dwell, and those are specific transportation related buzzwords that are out there. Detention is when somebody hangs onto your asset longer than they're supposed to. Dwell is when an asset is sitting when it's not generating revenue. And then, of course, we're expanding beyond the actual GPS location from a dots on a map type application to monitoring other things like temperature, like tire pressure monitoring, like load sensing to be able to know in an LTL environment whether something is running along the road and has available space to be able to maximize your load from point A to point B. So really looking forward to talking with everybody today. There's no such thing as a bad question with us, and glad to share all the insights of our business, and we'll kind of go from there. So I thank you, Robin, for the introduction.
That's great, Martin. Thanks very much. So I'd now like to hand over to Carmen Redondo at Kyocera. A couple of words from you, Carmen.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for having me in this panel. I'm also very excited to share with the other colleagues. So Kyocera EVX is the division of Kyocera Corporation, and we are the division of advanced electronic components. We cover many different types of components, from small capacitors, connectors, crystals, or RF components. And I'm in charge of the antennas, so my specialty is the antennas, and this is the topic we will cover today. We cover different types of applications or industries with our products, from automotive, consumer electronics like laptops or cell phones, medical, and then under the IoT, there are many different type of applications, as you well know, like from lighting, smart lighting, metering, smart homes, and of course, trackers, which is the topic that we are going to cover. Just before we pass to this topic, I wanted to mention that for antennas, we have global coverage with our R&D facilities and factories. Our factories are mostly in Asia, Korea, Vietnam, and China. And then we have design centers where we support our customers to validate their wireless devices. And we have in San Diego, France, in Nice, where I'm based, China, Korea, and Taiwan, sorry. So if we look at the topic of the trackers, one of the challenges we see from the antenna side is that every time the devices are smaller and we see a lot of connectivity there. We have seen now, we were talking a bit introduction about cellular. We have introduction to NTN, but also you have the traditional GPS, other connectivity like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to connect the devices or to transmit the data. And also you have the indoor location using, for example, ultra-wideband. So in each kind of technology, it has different considerations. Today, the discussions will focus more on the cellular and NTNs. It's the topics on the table. But yeah, we have different type of standard solutions and also customizations, because sometimes they are so small and so many different type of connectivity you need to add inside that you really need to have something customized. So this is the kind of things we will be discussing. Thank you.
That's great, Carmen. Thanks very much. And now I'd like to introduce Liz Wilson from Ground Control.
Not to suffer with the same problem as you, Robin, nearly. Hi, my name is Liz. Good morning if you're in the US. Good afternoon if you're in Europe. I'm the marketing director for Ground Control, and we design and build satellite IoT and tracking solutions. We have the privileged position of being able to work with multiple satellite networks, including the great team at Globalstar, to ensure that customers get the right connectivity depending on the application. We do manufacture our own devices here in the UK, and we work with trusted third parties when they've got a form factor that we think is really cool and we think our customers would benefit from. We've been doing this for 2 decades. We're located chiefly in the UK and US, and we have about 4,500 active customers in about 100 countries. And in terms of asset tracking specifically, I just wanted to quickly showcase a couple of the use cases that we work with. Obviously the key application for satellite when it comes to asset tracking is coverage. So it doesn't matter if you're in the ocean or deserts or forests or mountains, you can transmit a location and other telemetry data if you choose. And in this example, the Rockstar, for example, it's a handheld device. It's used by military personnel, among other people, and it transmits their location, but also wearables data like biometrics, so a heart rate, quite handy in some circumstances. Rock Fleet is principally designed for ships and is used quite frequently to transmit vessel monitoring systems information. So it is their location, but it's also catch rates, fuel consumption. There's a bit of a theme here. Rock Air, astonishingly, used for aviation, location data, key events, speed, altitude, and also it can transmit things like payload and fuel. And Rock Dash is effectively the same as Rock Air, designed for land vehicle tracking and particularly popular in oil and gas for tracking tankers, trucks, barges, and it shares those twin capabilities of external and external sense transmission. And that's it from me. We can crack on.
That's great, and I'm switched on now, so that's that's good. So I was going to start with a question of how relevant is asset tracking to your services. Arne, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what you've already said on that.
Maybe a couple of things. What I think, how asset tracking matters, maybe you've seen it or remember it from the slides. If not, let me quickly bring up the numbers for you. Asset tracking is a top 3 use case if you compare it to all of the use cases that we support today. Just the numbers, it means that 30% of all of our customers are asset tracking customers. And in terms of endpoints and subscriptions we serve, it's 12% of our customers using asset tracking solutions with our services. Why does it matter and why is it important? Why do we think that we play a role here? Is because of the global serviceability and availability of our service. And we see that this matters so much that also when you look at the customer base of Once, we now serve customers, the 21,000 customers, 70%, 70 of them use cases in IoT globally, internationally. It means in more than at least 2-3 countries. And I've shown you, this is a trend with all of the customers we see. And asset tracking is even more, let's say, an IoT use case because the extent of global usage is outstanding if you compare to other use cases. So what I see, what matters most for asset tracking and where I think also Once plays a vital role in IoT, first of all, the global availability of the service. Second, coverage. And third, understanding the requirements when it comes to global deployments. But before there, just to answer why it matters and why it's relevant for Once.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody else want to add something there? So Martin, you
Sure.
are coming at it from a different perspective. So useful if you could give that perspective, I think.
Sure. So obviously asset tracking is very important to Globalstar for 2 reasons. One, it's our fastest growing segment within our organization. So it's obviously very important to us, but we're also a device manufacturer as well. And really it's customer demand is really what's driving the innovation in this area. People expect visibility where they didn't necessarily expect visibility. And they're using those small pieces of data, a simple location, flow, temperature. They're using those things to make decisions every single day in their business. And I think that's probably the primary driver in our world that is driving the innovation in the space. It's consumer demand, it's customer demand. They're coming at it to just expect this kind of connectivity. And we're seeing the demand in the satellite world and the convergence in the cellular world as well is being driven by that.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so Liz, would you want to add to that, being also relating to satellite?
Yeah, I mean, for us, one of the founding businesses that made up ground control as it exists today is a company called Rock7. Rock7's genesis was a company called Yellow Brick Tracking or YB Tracking, which is quite famous if you're a yachter. I'm not. If you're a yachts person, it's quite common. You'll find people have heard of YB Tracking. So that is the beating heart of the ground control proposition. IoT came second, if you will. I mean, I don't necessarily think you can draw a line between the two, but if you did, for us, asset tracking came first, IoT came second.
It came top, right?
And it's I mean, to Martin's point, it's coverage, it's reliability, it's safety, it's all of those things, and it's fundamental to what we do.
That's great. And Carmen, I think that from an antenna perspective, I kind of get the impression that tracking is hugely important for your business, and a very large percentage of the products that you work with are asset trackers in one way, shape, or form. Is that right?
That's right. And especially because of the complexity to add so many technologies in normally small devices. So we see a lot of different type of applications from our customers. I mean, we're talking about the logistics, but also offenders trackers, of tracking of people, tracking of pets. And, when you need to make a tracker, like we have done trackers for cats, I can tell you they're very tiny and it's very complex to connect to the LTM or to add the, cellular satellite. And it's a lot of complexity. And that's why customers rely on our expertise to help them to make sure that they connect. Because if you have a tracker and when you need it, you can see where your pet is, this can be quite a challenge now for the user.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that if you don't have an antenna, you don't have you don't have wireless. So
Yeah, everything.
okay, that's great. So if we can move on to the next discussion point, which is really about NTN, so non-terrestrial network and everything that's going on there at the moment. So if I could start with you, Martin, what's your view on proprietary end-to-end versus standard end-to-end or standard space, or what do you think is going on there?
Yeah, so certainly in our world, we look at things a little bit differently than some because we're both a network operator and a device manufacturer. And the 3GPP standards that are out today are really device-centric standards. You have to be able to strike a balance between efficient use on the network and a feature set in the device itself. And in the space where you're both, proprietary is much easier to control. Right, we can control efficiencies on our network. We can do things from an optimization perspective, because in every network, including satellite and terrestrial, bandwidth is your limiting factor of everything. Right, so you have to be able to maximize your throughput, maximize your efficiency on your network, and that's where I see the big. I'm not going to say a disconnect, but I don't know that they're necessarily on the same page at the same time between the device standards and the network. They're really optimized for the terrestrial world. And of course, it's a challenge in the satellite world to start looking at that kind of thing. We're already playing in the direct to satellite space in a proprietary way. So we've obviously figured out ways to do things on our network. And I think ultimately the NTN standards, when they stop moving, because they are still moving, will start to generate adoption across the board, right?
Okay.
Everybody's on the different releases that go along.
Yeah. Okay. So Liz, do you want to add to that? So NTN, from your perspective, proprietary versus standard, what is the impact, do you think, from your point of view in the business? Do you think that it's going to actually move towards? So Martin's point is proprietary is like rules the roost, really, from an efficiency point of view. But do you see standardized NTN as being the way forward, or it's going to take a while to get there?
I don't think it's a versus thing. I think we're talking about two almost different classes of service here. So I would echo Martin's point, obviously, because this is our experience too. Having worked with proprietary systems for many years, they were custom made. Like the device was custom made to talk to the satellite. It's efficient. You have lots of flexibility over how you send your message, IP, message based, that sort of thing. You have lots of flexibility over how much data you send. And there's a lot to be said for that. And those sort of benefits and advantages don't go away with the advent of standards. That said, we are super excited about the potential of standards. I think the narrative it's driving around lower cost is not a bad one to have, because the goal is that it unlocks a lot more use cases, a lot more applications for satellite where it's perhaps been prohibitively expensive to date. So if people aren't familiar, the sort of the cost saving exercise here is, if you can build a dual mode satellite cellular modem, then many tens of thousands more will be built than a satellite only device. Mm-hmm. So you should simply, from economies of scale, get a lower price modem or chipset. And then in terms of airtime, bit fuzzier, because at the end of the day, in order to switch suppliers, which is the sort of big promise of NTN, you need to have multiple satellite network operators in the game to switch, right? Mm-hmm. That's some way off. And even then, not every satellite network operator is adopting the same technology, even within standards, right? You've still got multiple options within standards. So I think it has a lot of promise. I think it is some way off. And I don't see an immediate future or even a medium-term future where it replaces or supersedes proprietary. I think they will coexist for a very long time.
Okay, all right. So Arne, how would you see it from your perspective? The move towards standards for satellite. Do you see that as an important development for Once's business moving forward?
That question. I think first of all, Liz, what you said is very interesting, and I would echo to many of the things you said. with also giving it more color on two things. First of all, what we see is, of course, a very clear ask and demand. And even within the Q&A right now, I could see coverage. Do you offer a service here and there? So the most and highest relevance of satellite connectivity in any kind of stance for IoT is about extending coverage, where, for instance, cellular or other technologies are not given as of today. Because I don't believe that the commercial advantage of satellite will overcome or be exceeding the ones of cellular, because cellular has scale of powers already in the economies right now. So I see it more in the kind of extension. And the moment you go into using satellite as an extension to satellite, then it becomes to this very complex field of, okay, device capability, having a dual mode kind of stuff. Also, the price should not exceed, because now you're using multiple technologies at once, and it becomes very clunky, very hard to handle for customers. And of course, also then the certification. Can you use it really everywhere? All this has to be then settled, and makes it even more complicated for customers. I think it's a way to go, but this is how I see it. I think the need is there, but it is still not yet as mature as what it should be.
Yeah, and Carmen, if we've got satellite on the one hand and cellular on the other, and people are moving from one to the other, I mean, that's quite a lot of antenna implications there, aren't there?
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about cellular, everybody thinks, even for the GPS, thinks about the patch antennas or circular polarized antennas, and we're talking about other type of traditional satellites. You imagine these kind of large antennas, helix. And now when this coming into the IoT, you need to have everything very small devices. So many times the antenna is bigger than the device. So one of the things that is starting with the NTN is that most of the providers, they are trying to extend the cellular bands to cover also the NTN bands, the L and S bands prominently, which is a good starting point, but of course, there's a lot of testing ongoing is to see if it's sufficient. Like in the GPS, many times you can use a linear polarized antenna or chip antennas instead of patches, especially when you are not facing the sky, because you don't need the circular polarization in that way. Like your cell phone, right? Your cell phone doesn't have circular polarized antennas, and everybody's using it in the car for GPS. Now, when you come in the IoT and in the NTN, as we were discussing, there are different types of solutions, different type of satellites, and as a LEO, GEO, and different type of requirements. So I think it's a good starting point, but there is a lot of investigation we are doing about how we can combine, also have circular polarized antennas that can fit inside the IoT devices, and even handle different type of polarizations, because some satellites have one right hand, left hand. So there is a lot of, we have a big roadmap in our site, and we are partnering with different providers and to find the solutions for the coming challenges.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so if we can move a little bit more onto use cases, which is like a bit of a box of chocolates, really. I mean, there are going to be loads that we could talk about. We don't have that long, but so Liz, I mean, I don't know if you could tell us something about some of the problems you're solving with satellites, without giving us a Bible, please.
I know. I did think about this and think, goodness me. How long is a piece of string? Well, yes, I will give you a quick example of a customer for whom we solve a tracking problem. They are a snowmobile organization in Canada, northern Canada being out of cellular coverage for huge swathes, and 1.5 million Canadians enjoy the pastime of snowmobile. Who knew? Don't know if we have Canadians on the line, but if you snowmobile, pop a note in. Oh, wow. See, Martin, I forgot.
There you go.
There you go. So obviously, as Martin knows personally.
Oh, he's on next. So
Martin knows you can't snowmobile on an ungroomed trail. And so the means by which the trails are maintained is by a team of volunteers, and they're paid per kilometre. And in the absence of a cellular connection, the organisation was using a paper-based solution, which people honestly or dishonestly, it obviously wasn't very accurate. And then they used a shonky old satellite solution that wasn't very accurate, and the device itself was unreliable in those extreme cold circumstances. So they came to us with two key requirements. They needed really accurate tracking, and they needed Bluetooth so that the operators could use it for emergency messaging, and they needed to measure the speed, because if they groom too fast, it compromises the grooming. Again, all news to me, and it's not safe. It's not safe for them either. So we provided a device that has a spectacularly long battery life, which is not solar dependent either, because there's not, as Martin knows, not that much sun in northern Canada in the dark times of the year, and measured their position every 0.1 seconds. So they started it measured their position every 0.1, and then they stopped it, and it would send that hyper accurate data report back to the organization, who can then pay them appropriately for their time. And the reason I mention it is because I thought it was a nice microcosm of coverage where there's no other option, devices that can handle extremes of temperature, and a device that can also double up as an emergency means of staying safe and staying in touch, and also a device that's transmitting more than just location. It's transmitting, in this instance, speed and historical locations and events like start, stop, and that sort of good stuff. So just a little example.
No, that's great. I think that's a good sort of envisaging of it. So Martin, could you add to that, since you are the sort of satellite operator,
Sure.
something to contrast with that?
Yeah, so I kind of chose a little bit of a different use case, because we often talk about following assets and things like that, and I'm talking about an autonomous asset like a tank, and we're going to use Canada again because Canada is vast and it has very little cellular infrastructure. That many people in Canada heat their homes with liquid petroleum gas or propane, and they have actual tanks on at their house, and the tanks are used in all kinds of different processes because there isn't pipeline in the ground to bring natural gas. Well, propane's an extremely low margin commodity, so cost and efficiencies are everything in this particular application. So in our world, what we were asked to do to give somebody the remote connectivity to all of these tanks, the ability to know when the tanks needed filling, and because it is a usage-based emptying of the tank, depending on how cold it is, depending how much cooking they do, it's something that's variable and can't be scheduled. And we all know that the delivery of a liquid petroleum product is not cheap. You've got a driver, you've got a truck, you've got fuel costs, and you only want to go and fill the tank when it's below 30%, right? Before that, it is not profitable on the dollars and cents that you're getting paid for the commodity that's being put into it. So we implemented with a partner of ours based out of Montreal to satellite enable these tanks, and we via Bluetooth for the Rochester gauge on the tanks, go to our Smart One Solar. It is a solar device, and it literally Bluetooths the data serially through the satellite network and goes back to the endpoint for the distribution people to make these route decisions and delivery decisions that optimize mileage, that optimize dollars and cents and profit at the end of the day, and give somebody that ability to control their costs on a live, ongoing basis in a usage-based model.
Right. Okay. So Arne, you would be looking at it from a somewhat different perspective. So I don't know if you can, if you've got a particular use case that you can think of that where you are perhaps switching between cellular and satellite. I don't know if that is something that you do at the moment.
You mean me? Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
First of all, yes, at this moment we do not support satellite, to be very clear. Of course, we see requests coming from customers, but where we see this happening is very often where customers want to track a device across, very often not just on land side, but also then on waters, and where you see a high demand for really tracking the device, not just then when it moves within a certain country, but also it's moving on the seas and so on. Where I also see the biggest need of many satellite networks. And to my surprise, what we always or very often hear is that, of course, the sea regions are not really yet covered by the smaller networks yet, because they still cover also on the big regions such as the habitat areas. So here it might be a little bit of a dislink of the need of cellular networks and satellite networks where there is a cross usage possible. But as I said earlier, what we see with customers asking the most is to extend the current coverage with their use cases, which I see very prominently at SEAS.
Okay, all right, that's great. So Carmen, I'd like to move on a bit, and I'd like to ask you, what are the considerations to take into account when selecting the right antennas for a tracker? Be it satellite or cellular or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, or what are the issues that spring out for you?
Yeah, each technology have their issues. It's true that sometimes we have reference designs with major module makers, so that's very helpful. And of course, we have many different type of projects that we have done for trackers. So the typical tracker for industrial or for containers and things like that, it could be kind of like a rectangular shape, and that can vary a lot. But we kind of have like let's say favorite antennas that they are optimized, even to the very small devices. We can also use some band switching when they are too small and we need to cover many bands. So this is like the kind of starting point. Later, you will need to see based on your shape and size. Then you need to see if you want to, if your device is the user case, right? If it's facing the sky. Everybody thinks satellite or GPS needs to be a patch antenna. If your tracker is not facing the sky, if you want to really help. So this is the kind of first consideration, what the technologies you have and bands or countries you want to cover, the size, and then what is the user case. And then based on that, you can really start giving the recommendations. So we have some cases where normally kind of work. You always have to work around because, for antennas, everything, the whole device is radiating. People think, this antenna is perfect, and they expect to see everything like in the data sheet. But each device, we have different performance, different matching components, different layouts around the antenna. So that's why it's good a starting point, but you really need the help to really validate inside the device. And later you go to the case where you have these really small trackers where you cannot really use standard products, and like if you want to have like ankle trackers for offenders, tracking offenders, and of course even close to the body, you will have a lot of absorption of power from the body. So you really need to do customize there. You have, as I mentioned before, cats, and I think the smaller trackers we did is for pigeons. So you can imagine how little thing you need to put there.
Good grief.
So in those cases, we really need to bring up your creativity, a lot of testing, and so yeah, I think we really covered a really broad range.
That's wow. Okay, all right. So moving on a little bit more to Arne, how relevant is the radio standard type, so NB-IoT, 4G, 5G, for the design of the use case? Would you say?
Oh, tough question to be honest. So sometimes I would be happy if customers were asking us this in the first place when they design their solutions. And it goes maybe why this matters for this discussion. I think it goes hand in hand also when designing it also for satellite. Because Liz, you said something very interesting, and I think one should not underestimate that. First of all, you need to make sure where is the network supporting coverage. So the first question always is the countries where I want to deploy covered? So it does not matter if it's NB-IoT, 2G, 3G, just check the list. GSMA has this for cellular networks. The providers provided themselves and all of that. So make sure the countries you want to use and sell your devices are covered by the technology. And then the second one is, and you said it, Liz, it's the networks themselves, because there are certain providers of networks that provide services. And then you can also check, okay, do the same network providers offer also networks in other countries where I want to deploy? Because very often, and this is the third most relevant question, is the providers. Sometimes the providers are also the network providers, But just in case, like once, we are a virtual network provider. We use the networks, in this case of our shareholders, which is Deutsche Telekom, which is Bell Canada, which is SoftBank in APAC, so that we can also use their networks all across the regions and, of course, make sure that there is this longevity needed for asset tracking, because we all know once a use case is out in the field, you don't want to go there for truck roll and change it again, because very often the use case is bust. So all of these questions are super relevant, and to make it clear, and I think this also applies for satellite connectivity.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we're actually going to run out of time very shortly, but I'd just like to squeeze in another question for Martin and for Liz, which is direct to device. So you talked earlier, Martin, about direct to device, but you didn't have much of a chance to elaborate on that. Can you just explain what's going on there and why it's important, and how you see that developing?
Sure. I mean, we look at direct-to-device and IoT as kind of two separate applications. Direct-to-device in our world is really to the handheld, the phone, somebody's iPhone, somebody's Android device, and that fits into more of a broadband application from a satellite perspective, and that's probably where the big discussion point is on which networks are out there, because as Arne mentioned, different networks have different capabilities, different networks have different bandwidths. So in the satellite world, because there isn't a 5G standard for satellite, everyone's a little bit different. And that's going to be one of the biggest challenges in the NTN deployment, quite frankly, is the networks are very dissimilar. And we really haven't started that commercial discussion that needs to start happening. And how is everybody going to get paid in this big ecosystem? In the terrestrial world, people have spent years and years and years forming these roaming partnerships, forming these country regional relationships that allow a device to roam from location to location. There hasn't been a lot of discussion in the standards environment at this point anyway on how do you do that from a commercial perspective. And finally, just a quick point on what we're really in this business for, and it's actually the data itself. So that's a real challenge when you talk about many different networks, because the data has to come from a remote location, has to go to an endpoint somewhere along the way. And in many cases, those could be dissimilar networks. So how do you manage all of that sort of stuff? I think that's going to be one of the interesting discussions that needs to still happen from a middleware perspective on the NTN discussion of how the data gets from point A to point B, and then how do you talk back to that device, not knowing what network it necessarily is on at any given time. Those are all challenges I think that still need some further discussion.
That's great. Okay, Liz, do you want to pick that up? The whole thing about direct to device, and do you have a perspective on that?
I do. It was the most painful blog post I've ever researched and written in my entire life, was this topic. Well, yeah, I mean, for a start, the term, right? Direct to cell, direct to device, direct to mobile, like people are using them interchangeably with standards. They're using them interchangeably for cellular and IoT devices. It's very unhelpful. I'm drawing a line in the sand. Direct to cell is for phones, direct to device is for IoT. Join me. let's have a new, let's decide that this is the way forward. I think people do think it's sort of synonymous with standards, or at least, you know, you see them a lot banded around in the same conversation. It's not the same thing. Globalstar has a D2D service already, as we know, which is to say that they have an unmodified cellular device that talks to Globalstar. An unmodified device that's standards-based could also talk to a satellite. I think the major challenge is, and we really don't have time to get into it, but you know, there are two ways of doing this in the standards-based arena, one of which is to modify the satellite so that it can talk to the unmodified terrestrial device. And the other way is to modify the terrestrial device so that it can talk to an unmodified satellite. And that's not trivial in either case. In the case of an unmodified satellite, you've got to update thousands of devices on Earth, so to speak. And in the case of modifying the satellite, you've got to build and launch appropriate satellites that are ready to connect to unmodified cell phones and LTE-powered IoT devices. Both come with a huge set of challenges. So I think the sort of overwhelming point here is To a degree, there's quite a lot of hype in this conversation. Not this conversation. This conversation has been very, very measured. But in the broader kind of D2D standards-based stuff, there's a lot of hype, and we are some way away from this being a reality. And I would really strongly urge that you come and talk to one of us, because all of us have an informed view on this topic, and we can give you this non-partisan, objective perspective on where we're at with this stuff.
Super. Okay. Now, unfortunately, that's all we can fit into this this session. So I'd like to thank you for your participation in this very short panel session. We could have carried on, I think, this for quite a considerable time, but great to have you. Thanks very much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Super. Right, we're now going to move on to a spotlight by Jason Dietrich at Core, navigating IoT supply chain security in a connected world. So I think this is only 10 minutes, so I bet I'm going to hand over to you, Jason, to maximize your time on it.
No, I appreciate that, and certainly thank you for everyone who's attended. Good morning, good afternoon, and with our 10 minutes here, we'll do a little bit of a flyby on who Core is, as well as really talking about security within navigating the supply chain, and certainly with the topics that have been covered around asset tracking. So I'll spend the first 2 or 3 slides a little bit about Core and how we think about helping companies in terms of deploying their IoT solutions, and then I'll spend the last few slides really focused on how we think about security. I think because we only have 10 minutes, unfortunately, we won't have a live Q&A, but certainly, after the presentation, contact details will be shared, and certainly happy to answer any questions you may have, once we get through the presentation. I want to be mindful of our other presenters. So when we think about, the IoT deployments we've seen as a company, we've seen a lot of fragmented solutions and a fragmented approach to how companies have deployed their solutions in the market. And our goal is really from device design all the way through connectivity to ensure data capture and delivery that we're becoming a central hub to help you connect all the dots. And so we've seen the integration and the deployment of fragmented solutions. Our goal is to help you streamline that, make sure that you have an opportunity to see end-to-end lifecycle management. That means from the design all the way through deployment, all the way through the management of those devices in the field, and making sure that, again, you have a full visibility to the life cycle of that device. We certainly offer global connectivity and a global connectivity management solution that is a single platform that helps you manage your assets no matter where they are in the world in one single pane of glass. And the whole thesis of today, or maybe the main commentary of today, is around security and compliance. And certainly we take that seriously and believe that any solution deployed, security and compliance has to be a major thought process all the way back from the beginning of your device design. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into more detail. A little about us, we are, in the business of providing, again, companies with the ability to deploy full lifecycle IoT solutions, regardless of your use case, regardless of where you are in the world. We currently manage over 19 million devices, over 3,600 customers. We're a global company with a variety of capabilities that help you make sure your deployments can not only, get off the ground, but can scale as your business grows. So again, post this session, happy to entertain any questions specifically to Core. When we think about a deployment and we think about IoT deployments, for the most part are complex. And we think about it in 4 stages, from the build, and that's really architecting your device, thinking about how that device is going to be deployed in the field, and what the characteristics of that device and what it needs to be successful for the long run. And then we actually start deploying, and that's mobilizing your vision, getting that IoT solution in the field, into the markets that you want to serve, without friction. And then there's the management of those devices. How do we make sure we're future-proofing your solution? Making sure you have the efficiencies you desire, the longevity of that device in the field, and you have full visibility, again, to the full life cycle of that device. and then certainly helping you scale. We look at a lot of companies, once you've figured out how to build it early on and build in the right things to make that successful in the field, you've started to do your deployments, you've started to go to, to get those deployments out into your target markets, and you're managing those devices. Our goal is certainly to help you scale and accelerate growth, expanding your capabilities, expanding your reach, and the impact it can have not only for you as potentially the solution provider, but also your customers, and making sure they're getting full value from your solutions. So that's a little bit about Core, about as fast as I can do it. What I really want to turn the page to now is really the topic of security and why we're here. Obviously, when it comes to IoT deployments, security is front and center in many people's minds. We at Core have done a lot of research with our customer base. We've leveraged, third-party firms and some of their research. And over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen anywhere from 42% to, in some cases, 77% of people who are deploying a solution saying that security is their primary concern. And what we try to do is help companies think about, how do they leverage best practices as you're designing and deploying your solution? How do you make sure you're protecting those assets when they hit the field? And how do you leverage the right experience that exists in the market from not only Core, but many providers who can support you in making sure you're leveraging their expertise? When you think about an IoT deployment, we think about it as 3 key layers. There's the device layer, there's the communication layer, and there's ultimately the application layer. And all 3 of them need to have security built in. At the device level, making sure you're building the right technology and technology stack to ensure those devices are not, able to be penetrated, or that there's the right mechanisms to ensure the right updates to ensure, security at the device level. At the communication layer, you're typically leveraging a company like Core to make sure that that device is now connected, that data has integrity, there's encryption, and that data flows, natively the way you need it to make sure your solution is adequately, again, secure from a connectivity standpoint. And then most of the solution providers we work with are really focused on their application layer. What are the capabilities they provide to their end user to give value to that customer? And of course, we're here to support those customers and those solution providers in making sure their application layer is also equally secure. So we like to think about, leverage best practices, making sure from design all the way through deployment and all the way through the management of those devices, that security is built in throughout, and ultimately using the right resources to help you make sure you're leveraging expertise that exists in the market. From a Core perspective, when we think about IoT security and being comprehensive in nature, I won't go through all 3 of these, but what I'd like to more focus on is when we think about security of that device when it's in the field, and specifically when we're talking about asset tracking, you really need to build in a plan that thinks about, number one, how do you deal with devices that may be stolen or go missing? How are you tracking data usage anomalies in real time? How do you make sure that you have redundancy built in to your device? So should you have a device failure or a network failure where maybe that exposes that device to security risk? Are you monitoring unusual, communication patterns? Looking for those anomalies again, or looking for things that just don't look right? And do you have the right alerting to support that? Thinking about, do you have full visibility to all of your devices? Is there clear visibility? Have you built in the alerting? And do you know where those are, and are they performing as expected? Are you able to manage and monitor your network traffic, right? Do you have that visibility? And ultimately, are you working with a vendor or a partner to ensure that you have secure network traffic? So these are things that we think about, that customers talk to us about as they're deploying and thinking about their next generation, or maybe they're a new business and have a new device that they want to get into the field. Those are the things that we talk to customers about, making sure as they're building security into their overall solution, that those are the things that we talk a lot about. From our perspective, we have capabilities within our solutions, certainly VPNs. We have a tool called Security Pro, which helps really manage and look at traffic level diagnostics, and then certainly mobile device management to again, giving you a single source for complete management of that device, and making sure that we know identity management, data protection, and really offering that comprehensive security that you would expect in any deployment. I know that was very fast. I'm trying to adhere to my 10 minutes. Hopefully that resonated, and certainly the panel before articulated many of these things as far as how assets and asset management and tracking of assets throughout the supply chain are certainly a use case we're seeing more and more, and we certainly want to be able to help you in terms of making sure they're secure. So if you have further information you'd like, certainly reach out to us directly. You can also go to our website, and we're certainly here to answer any questions you have, post this webinar. So thank you again. I think you're on mute, sir.
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, he puts me on mute. That was really interesting, and I'll probably need to contact you actually about that afterwards. So yeah, thanks very much for that.
No,
Okay, we're now moving. Great. We're now moving on to the next spotlight, and here we have even more constrained for time because we have two speakers. We have Rich Pellegrini from iBasis, and we have Dean Richmond from Quake Global. So, gentlemen, I'm going to pass straight over to you to fight over your 10 minutes.
Very good. Thank you, Robin. So I'm Rich Pellegrini, Senior Product Manager for IoT at iBasis. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with iBasis, we are one of the world's largest international operators, and we have been providing connectivity solutions to our operator and enterprise customers for over 25 years.
And I'm Dean Richmond. I'm with Quake Global. We are right here in San Diego. We've also been operating for a little over 25 years. We manufacture programmable edge computing devices, telematics and modems, both satellite and cellular, and we operate in over 150 countries.
Okay, so today, Dean and I are going to be covering two important components of a supply chain management solution: the connectivity and the devices. Often, Quake and iBasis will be selling these components into the same supply chain solution providers. So first, the mission of iBasis is to provide cellular connectivity to IoT devices that's simplified, intelligent, and de-risked. And in order to satisfy the needs of a global deployment for the supply chain, we need to provide, iBasis provides connectivity that's simplified by providing automatic connectivity out of the box, depending on wherever a device starts up in a country. We provide intelligent connectivity with dynamic network selection technology, and we de-risk connectivity with standards-based eSIM technology, allowing connection to the most operators around the world. So in addition to providing a full spectrum of data connectivity from the very low to the very high, we offer a fully functional connectivity management platform that allows supply chain service providers to manage their tracker fleet. And we also spend a lot of time with our device partners like Quake and the OEMs of our customers to ensure that their devices are meeting the proper requirements to make most out of the connectivity solution. And in this area, we're ensuring that the devices of our partners are meeting the correct protocols, that they adhere to the correct mobile device specifications, especially in the areas of network connectivity and remote profile download. We also help our customers with certifications, especially in the area of eSIM certification or EUICC certification. And it's a key point to note here that it's important to bring in your connectivity solution provider early in the design and deployment of your device, so you can ensure that you're obtaining the best connectivity experience and that your device meets the right requirements to do that. So now we'll look at some of the challenges of a global supply chain deployment. Some of the problems that are faced here is that supply chain solution providers want to deploy a single SKU for their tracker. And iBasis solves this problem by providing a single SKU programmable eSIM so that their device can connect on a bootstrap initially in the country it turns on, and then later we can change that profile to a more regional profile to meet localization or regulation needs. These solution providers also need best coverage per region, and that means providing multiple operators in the country that they're operating in, including all 3 tier 1 operators in the USA. And for less expensive tracker devices that don't support GPS or GNSS, we provide real-time location information so that the solution provider can still provide that track and trace capability in real time. So in order to meet the connectivity requirements of global supply chain deployments, they need connectivity that's simplified, intelligent, and de-risked.
So then, it's time to talk a little bit about hardware. Again, Quake has many solutions, and one of the first things that we talk to our partners about, whether it's an OEM or an integrator or software VAR, is what sort of solution do they need? Is it a global cellular solution? Is it global satellite? Is it both? What regions are they going to be in? We start down a road. And the industry's faced when going down that road is a lot of SKUs have popped up. And I think during COVID time, SKU rationalization and minimizing inventory became super important. So we've created some solutions with partners and partners like iBasis, allowing for that global connectivity, allows you to look at that global versus regional SKU and really determine what you can do. So we produce truly global SKUs that can be regionalized, and you can make it regional by setting profiles with these partners for the Americas, for Asia, whatever region that you're in. And then the other major decision point is what kind of device you want, whether it be a dumb device passing through everything, or do you need an edge computing device? And the edge computing device actually helps you minimize costs as well with your connectivity, as it keeps your data costs down, and of course your server cost as well. So with a programmable solution, you're able to take if-then statements and really take the data that you need in each case. Whether it is around problems with the device, or video-based solutions, or just your fuel and battery management. And then the next key win that you can look at is on-site versus remote updates. Everyone owns a car, and when we bring our cars in for service and get those remote or updates, not remotely, but actually in the station, there is a cost to that, and time that is not advantageous to the customer. Well, think about capital equipment in your fleets. You don't want to bring them in for service for software. So you can remotely update your machines with devices like this, and not only remotely update the device itself, but the whole environment. So the TCU, the ECU, the whole environment. So first, in your decision process is which global hardware do you need? Do you need a cellular solution? Do you need a satellite solution? Do you need both? Do you need Wi-Fi? Do you need Bluetooth? Do you need Ethernet? How many cans do you need in reading your device? These are all decision points that will help you determine your hardware. Then you pick your global connectivity partner. And then you make a major decision point of, are you going to customize your software in-house? Are you going to use an integrator? Or are you going to partner with a third-party software provider? All are great solutions and really dependent upon what staff you have and really where you want to invest your money. Then you obviously have your solution in which you can visualize things like location and fuel management and service uptake, service and maintenance issues, on the edge, determining when you need to schedule for maintenance. Yeah, you can have predictive analytics with this. All of these solutions are enabled by having data. And devices like these, being globally connected, allow you to do that and manage your fleet, monitor it, and secure it the way that you need to. So that will wrap us up. And if you have any questions, you can always email Quake through me at drichmond@quakeglobal.com, or simply go on our website, quakeglobal.com.
Yes, and we
Wonderful.
look forward to your questions.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you very much, and right on time. So that was very good. Okay, well, moving on now to our third spotlight with Veronica Parachis from Gurtum. So over to you, Veronica. Give you your full 10 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin. Hi there, I'm Veronica Parachis. I'm Business Development Manager at GPS Trace, one of the Gurtum products. Thank you for the opportunity to ponder how IoT technology can be used to manage our assets. Today, I'll give you a short overview about our company, products, issues and use cases in asset tracking that our partners faced and how we plan to solve them with our new solution. Our company has more than 20 years of experience in GPS technology and software. Our team has designed and launched 3 advanced applications for GPS monitoring: Ruhavik, Petrovic, and ForGuard. Proud to work with 100+ countries across the globe and protect vehicles and assets of 240,000 end users. A huge part of our success belongs to our partners, telematic service providers. They work directly with our customers in their regions, evaluate market needs, and provide feature requests for us. More than 80% of our features are initiated by these GPS hardware and software experts. And it's exactly some partner requests that made us pay attention to asset monitoring. Of course, we checked the forecast and found that global asset tracking market size is projected to grow 20.4% annually up to 2032. For 20 years, we have been studying and developing GPS technology, delivering top products in this field. Belly technology was nearby, but not in our focus. Compared to GPS, Belly technology may be cheaper, easier to use, and has a strong demand for growth. Our next step was investigating the most popular use cases where our partners use Bailey technology and our application, such as number 1, construction. Helmets equipped with BLE beacons track the real-time location of workers, ensuring they stay within the safe zones and providing immediate alert in case of violations. The second point is waste management. Garbage bin monitoring. BLE-enabled garbage bins are monitored for fill levels, locations, etc. The set actually is livestock monitoring, pets, animals, even their harnesses. Farmers report up to 20% improvement in herd management. And the last point, my favorite one, inventory tracking. Bailey system improves warehouse inventory accuracy by 18% and order fulfillment by 22%. Well, it's not all the use cases, but the majority of them are located in this field. And we, together with our partners, are going to design applications that solve all these cases and guarantee the safety and security of any assets and people. Some partners called it a blue ocean. By the way, you know why every businessman is looking for blue ocean? Because he was just tired of swimming with sharks. He wanted to find a market where he wasn't just another fish in this area. But, okay, let's think about possible rocks in this ocean. There are some common issues which our clients face trying to implement asset tracking in current products designed for GPS monitoring. Number one is sophisticated reports and apps notification for a particular tech equivalent asset. Well, in many cases, owners need to monitor specific assets closely and generate reports or receive notification for every single tag. Imagine you have 300 assets under watch and suddenly get an alarm that something is on the move. You're trying to figure out if it's your worker who simply forgot to take off his smart helmet walking home, or it's your expensive bulldozer actually left the garage without any permission. Agree, it's important details you need to know. Ability to upload maps of your factory site or any limited area. Again, imagine if your building or warehouse have multiple floors, details plans simply won't be available on popular maps. Moreover, the ability to upload your own map will allow you to use the correct names for rooms, offices, storage area. And after all, trying to find things in the warehouse without updated map, it's like trying to find your keys in the dark. It's frustrating and likely to end with you in the broom closet instead of the office. Well, the most important point is reduction of costs. Let's talk about practical way to save on asset tracking with Bell eTag. Imagine you have a warehouse full of goods. Instead of putting GPS tracker on every single unit, we use one tracker for the whole space and Bell eTags for units. The tracker picks up signals from these tags and knows where everything is. We plan to use every 3 gateways, GPS trackers, in order to improve the accuracy of signal and locations. These 3 gateways are sending information to your application. You'll get all the tracking data you need with just one device. It's smart tracking for you. The fourth point is bulk tag registration. Let's say you have just received a shipment with 100 of new assets for your inventory. Each one needs a tag to be tracked. Without bulk upload feature, it's like manually writing each address on 100 invitation. It's not just slow, it's also where mistakes can creep in. And the last point is scalable tag management. We are working on a system that can handle more tags without much effort. A more intuitive account interface, smarter tag grouping, and a system that's quick and responsible. By the way, do you know why assets don't get lost anymore? Because they've all got tags. It's like social media for inventory. Recognizing all these factors, we have decided to focus on this niche by developing a dedicated product. And we're thrilled to announce that the MVP of this new solution will be launched this autumn. So if asset tracking is a priority for your business, contact us now to secure early partner access and be among the first to experience the benefits. Well, it was your asset tracking by GPS Traves, Gurtam. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, Robert?
Thanks. Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I like that bit about perhaps getting into a closet, not getting out again.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
a real situation, actually.
No, I think discussion about some of the big issues. I think that was very interesting, actually. So well done. That's great. So that's the end of this session. So David, should I hand over to you now?
Yes, you can hear me.
I can.
Thank you, Robin, and thank all of our participants today. We're glad that our audience is here as well. So thank everyone for joining. Please join us. We want to invite everyone who can come to Embedded World North America, a brand new event. The IMC will be there in full as well. And look forward to, we have our 2025 calendar of events will be coming out shortly. So look forward to that. So thanks to everyone who joined us, and we hope to see you next time.